Welcome to Podkey NBA, where today it's big trades, draft strategy, and cap pressure everywhere. A couple of teams just changed their identities overnight, and a lot of the league is reacting to the same reality. Stars still matter most, but health, apron rules, and future picks are deciding how those swings actually happen. The LaMelo Ball trade is one of those moves that makes perfect sense and also makes you raise an eyebrow at the same time. Minnesota gets Ball and Josh Green, and Charlotte gets Naz Reid, an unprotected 2033 first, multiple swaps and second rounders. It's a future-heavy package, and that 2033 pick is the kind of asset front offices stare at for a long time. For the Wolves, the logic is clear. Anthony Edwards needed another real creator next to him, and LaMelo gives them size, passing, pace, lob chemistry, and enough shooting to bend defenses. The concern is the part everybody immediately jumps to. LaMelo has chronic ankle issues. He hasn't played a playoff game. And Minnesota also gave up a lot of long-term flexibility for a player whose availability is never a small footnote. There's also the emotional side of it, because Naz Reid wasn't just productive. He was part of the Wolves' personality, and fans do not casually move on from a cult favorite like that. Charlotte's side is colder, but pretty understandable. They sold high, avoided the looming monster extension, opened apron and cap room, and pushed the bill toward Brandon Miller, cheaper guards, and patience. This also ties into the earlier Julius Randle move, where Minnesota cleared major salary and created a big trade exception. The whole picture says they want to be faster, more guard-driven, and more aggressive around Edwards. Charlotte, meanwhile, is leaning the other way. More draft capital, more financial predictability, and less dependence on one volatile star outcome. That point guard market is still wild, though. Teams keep paying for true shot creation because there just aren't many big playmaking guards available, even when the durability questions are obvious. Then there's the Giannis trade, which feels like one of those league reset moves even if everybody saw the possibility coming. Miami lands Giannis in a massive package built around young players, picks, a swap, and more future control. Milwaukee chose flexibility and volume over taking back one giant contract and pretending the old window was still open. For the Heat, the upside is enormous. Giannis with Bam Adebayo gives you terrifying size, defense, pressure at the rim, and a front court nobody wants to deal with over 7 games. The problem is also obvious in about 10 seconds. Where's the shooting? And who's doing the clean perimeter creation when things bog down? Miami is tight against the apron, so fixing that isn't as simple as going shopping. They'll probably have to do what Miami always does. Keep flipping pieces, keep sniffing around shooters, and trust Pat Riley's appetite for chaos. Milwaukee's side of this is a little sadder. A lot of the reaction was that indecision dragged this out, hurt leverage, and made the return feel more like a rebuild package than a clean superstar auction. And just like with LaMelo, health sits right in the middle of the whole conversation. Giannis is still Giannis, but calf and back concerns matter more when the price is this big and the timeline is this urgent. A lot of these deals make more sense when you look at the new apron rules. Teams are way less interested in winning the press conference with free agency and way more interested in building through trades, exceptions, and cap gymnastics. The second apron in particular has made front offices much more careful about stacking expensive stars without a clear path to fill out the roster. You can still take a huge swing, but the penalty for missing is harsher now. That's why draft capital, swaps, and weirdly timed future picks keep showing up everywhere. The league is treating flexibility itself like a star asset. The draft has shifted with that same mindset. Flatter lottery odds have chipped away at the old tanking math. So bottoming out doesn't guarantee the reward teams used to chase. That makes swaps, protected picks, and distant unprotected bets more interesting, but also harder to value in the moment. A 2033 pick can look brilliant or meaningless, depending on how the next 8 years go, which is a fun little headache for everyone involved. Draft night itself sounded like total disorder again. Tons of movement in the second round, dummy boards, late pivots, hats not matching teams, and somehow in one of these frenzies, no first-round picks actually changed hands. At the top of the class, the names that kept coming up were Cameron Boozer, Darren Peterson, A.J. DeBonsa, and guards like Darius Acuff and Keaton Wagler, with teams weighing upside against fit pretty carefully. Boozer got a lot of love for being polished and well-rounded. Peterson's ceiling is huge, but the medical history keeps hovering over the evaluation. And that was true for several prospects in this class. That injury conversation showed up everywhere, from Peterson to Quaintance coming off an ACL. Teams are digging much harder into medicals now, and not every agent loves how much gets asked for. This also felt like a strong depth draft. People kept talking about moldable mid-lottery and late-round players like Nate Ament, Yaxel Lindeborg, and Mirez Johnson as guys who could turn into useful NBA pieces. Internationally, Kareem Lopez being discussed as the first Mexico native-born first-rounder was a landmark note. And Jesse Lopez got mentioned historically too. Charlotte doubling up on German prospects fit the broader theme of teams leaning into trusted global pipelines. The second round has basically become its own little economy. Picks get flipped constantly, teams stash projects, and the cost of taking a weird upside swing is low enough that everybody talks themselves into at least one. One scouting approach that stood out was the so-called prospector method. Hunt for fallen blue-chip talent, overlooked older players, freak athletes, and grinders who play through stuff. It's a pretty clean map for where value can hide. There was also talk of some teams using private investigators, genetic models, and other unconventional tools. Whether that sounds cutting edge or mildly unhinged probably depends on whether the pick works. A smaller but still important story was Austin Reaves getting a massive 4-year deal. Roughly $185 million, reportedly the biggest contract ever for an undrafted player. Good for him, obviously. For the Lakers, though, it raised the usual question about paying near-star money to a very good player when your roster still has obvious needs and not much room for mistakes. And around the league, coaching hires keep tilting toward the college pipeline and development-heavy thinkers. Dusty May was one example that got attention, along with some pretty unusual contract structures for coaches, short guarantees, team options, and a lot of job precarity. What ties all of this together is pretty simple. Teams are chasing stars, but they're also terrified of getting trapped by the wrong star, the wrong injury history, or the wrong cap sheet. So you get aggressive front offices, like Pat Riley and Tim Connolly, pushing chips in, rebuilds that prefer 6 flexible assets over one expensive answer, and fans trying to process how a jersey can be both a business move and a breakup. That's the NBA right now. Huge ambition, constant asset management, and just enough chaos to make every clean theory feel temporary. That's the roundup for Podkey NBA. Thanks for hanging out, and I hope you're now at least slightly more comfortable with the league's obsession with picks, swaps, and ankle reports. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.